Everybody. Welcome to our webinar today on making it work for our problems from our originally known as Problems of Practice seminar. Now it's just called Making It Work for the problems in library makerspaces. We have a great webinar for you today. First off, my name is Kelly Nimitz. I am the chair of the Events and Programs Committee for Library Makers. For those that don't know, Library Makers, here's a quick little intro. We're a community that connects and supports library maker staff of all levels and experiences. We recognize the experience and strengths that each member brings to the community. We want to create a safe and welcoming space for library maker staff to ask questions, share knowledge, find a mentor, develop skills, and or exchange ideas with a diverse group of professionals. We want to equip and advance library professionals to be innovative leaders in their field. So we're all about supporting people. And if you ever want to join us, you can always just go to librarymakers.org to make a free account and connect with everybody. All right, so we had people that came in fill out a survey for us, just because we want to kind of get an idea of like where everybody's coming from today. So we have most people coming from the South, which is really cool. A few people in the Midwest and West and North. Most people are from public libraries, it looks like. We also have a few from the academic libraries, which is great. And then we have mostly suburban libraries joining us, but some urban and then rural libraries as well. Thank you, so thank you guys for coming in today. Just a reminder, you guys can introduce yourselves in the chat if you like, or you can also pose questions throughout the webinar, and we'll have a chance to try to
Hey,
answer them at the very end.
doing good. Good to see
And
you. I'm back.
all right, and just another reminder, this webinar is going to be recorded, so be sure to. We just ask that you kindly mute yourselves while we present. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing that, and I'll stop sharing my screen real quick, and I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to our. Sorry, give me a second. Sorry, the slide. I'm never good with slides when I'm on full screen, so you'll have to give me a second. But I will go ahead and stop sharing my screen, but I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to our presenters. So we have Lisa Regalla, Cindi Place, David Powell, and Stephanie Johnson. So I'll go ahead and mute myself and let you guys go ahead.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelly. I'm just trying to make sure I can get my slides up there too. Don't think that quite worked as planned. Let's see. Are you all seeing the slides? Okay, great. Wasn't quite sure. It looks a little different on my end. Okay. Hi, everyone. As Kelly said, I'm Lisa Regalla. I'm the project director for this IMLS grant and joined by some awesome Library Makers leadership team members, and I can let them introduce themselves when they speak. But we're really excited today to talk to you about and launch our latest publication called Making It Work, Navigating Challenges in Library Makerspaces. And again, thank you to the Institute of Museum and Library Services who helped fund Library Makers and this project. So first, wanted to ground everyone in what we mean when we say the term makerspace, because all of us are going to be talking about the term makerspace throughout our time together. And sometimes when we hear the word makerspace, we think of this first item in the list, that it has to be a dedicated space, that you have a room in the library that only has maker equipment in it, and you're able to shut the door and lock it at night, right? And many of us have spaces like that, but many of us don't, right? And so we just like to show that and recognize that when we use the term makerspace, we're inclusive of all of these different types of makerspaces. So whether you have a dedicated space, whether you have a multi-use space, which could mean a maker cart, right, that you roll out at a table between the stacks of books, or into a programming room that gets used for, multiple meetings and purposes, a multi-use space, we call that. It could be that you have an outreach and mobile unit. Maybe that's a big fancy van like you see at the bottom there for Evanston Public Library. Or it could be a bunch of plastic bins that go in the trunk of your car, right? And go to different locations in your community too. That's also a makerspace. Many of you we know do at-home programming, whether that's a library of things or maker tools and resources that patrons are able to check out and do their making at home. If you do virtual programming or you have patrons doing making at home, we also consider that a makerspace and maker programming. And the final category is community events. We know many of you might have a repair fair or show up and bring your maker programming to a farmer's market or other type of community event. So you'll hear us use the term makerspace, but we always like to ground this in the fact that when we hear that term, we know many of you have one or a variety of all these different types of maker spaces and maker programming in your libraries. And we talk about the fact of what is a makerspace and how we define it in this resource. And we're going to talk about this resource a little bit more today. So we wanted to ground you in this. The Makers in the Library Toolkit, this is a resource that originally came out in the summer of 2020, when you can imagine we all had a few other things on our mind in the summer of 2020. But it was a resource that takes you kind of on a guided path of how to create and sustain a community-driven makerspace. It's a free toolkit. It's on our Library Makers site. It's also on a separate website that the QR code is here. But we followed 10 under-resourced libraries that were under-resourced either because they had one staff member, they might have been in a low socioeconomic disadvantaged community, they might have just been a library that didn't have much funding, right? But we followed them, we talked to their community members, we worked with them over the course of a few years to develop their makerspace, and then took those learnings and findings and tools into this toolkit. So that launched in 2020, and then folks outside of California said, hey, this is applicable to us too, right? It's not just libraries in California. And so our first IMLS grant that this group got that helped found Library Makers, the community of practice, also helped to edit this toolkit. So we had librarians from around the country edit, give us feedback on the toolkit, and it enabled us to add more examples from libraries all around the country that are featured in there, and a few new tools as well. So we're going to be referring to this toolkit a little bit throughout our presentation today too. So we just wanted to give you a little bit of grounding on the history and where it came from, and that sort of taxonomy of what a makerspace is to us is included in that toolkit as well, if you want to learn more. But today we're really here to talk about the complex but rewarding work of running a maker program and makerspace. You might be asking yourself, do we have the space? Do we have the staffing? Do we have the budget? Do we have the right skills in place? Any of this sound familiar to anyone out there, right? Things that you might be struggling with. So you might have your program up and running or your space up and running, but there's constantly these challenges, right, that we're all facing, whether it's an outreach program space, whether it's in a multi-use space or a dedicated space. We were hearing over and over again of these like shared challenges that everyone was having. And so part of our current grant was, hey, let's look at what these challenges are and help define them, and then create a resource, which is what we're going to share with you today. That's not just telling you what all those challenges are, but hey, you all have creative ideas. You've been trying to tackle these challenges and address them. And so to kind of make a collection of the ways that we have been all collectively addressing these challenges. So a little bit about the challenges and where they came from, how we decided on the 5 challenges that you're going to hear today. They were derived from different roundtable discussions that we had online. Many of you maybe participated in some of the ones that we had online earlier this year. We had ones seeking some information before that. We did some at some local conferences. So we had discussions at conferences, or we'd have little surveys up at conferences and things like that to collect information. We ran some focus groups, we did some surveys, we did some individual interviews, and we also partnered with the University of Illinois, and they were doing some research from this project that you can see here, the National Forum to Connect and Advance Library Makerspaces. And so we were a partner with them on their project as well. and they were looking into the future strategic directions of library makerspaces. And we're also doing some research on what are these kind of common challenges. So I encourage you, this is a free download. They have a great website. This resource just launched earlier this year. So I encourage you to check out that resource as well as a complement to what we're going to talk about today. So these 5 challenges that we identified are outreach and engagement, making the case, accessibility and belonging, staff growth and empowerment, and sustainability and future readiness. And so the webinar today, we're going to go one by one on each of these challenges, tell you a little bit more about them, what they mean to us, what we heard. And again, like I said, not just the challenges, but the solutions you have, right? We know that all of you have been trying to address these challenges. And so we went and collected all of these strategies that people have been using to address the challenges and even wrote up some case studies of libraries as well. So, ta-da, this is our new resource. This is the cover of the new resource that's now available for download on our Library Makers website, as well as on the Makers in the Library Toolkit website that I just showed you. We put the QR code here as well. We hope that everyone's going to find this really meaningful and that the conversation isn't going to stop here today, right? We're all going to keep inventing and creating new solutions to these challenges as we move forward, and that this is just the start. So with that, we're going to kind of go through the challenges one by one, and I'm going to pass it on to, I think it's Stephanie next, right?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie Johnson, and I am part of Library Makers, the overall general leadership team. So for outreach engagement, obviously, this is a huge challenge for all makerspaces. It centers on how libraries can build that meaningful relationship with their communities to inform and strengthen makerspace programs or their makerspaces themselves. So how do you go about and do that? Some of the strategies that you can take with outreach and engagement are authentic engagement. So that means you, as a staff member, you could be learning alongside your patrons, not just instructing them on how to do things. If you're always honest about your own limitations, saying, I don't really know a lot about this either, but we can learn together, that's a great first step to kind of engaging your patrons and your community with makerspaces. To help build momentum and make your space more visible, you can always leverage your patrons that are actually working in there and showcase their different work, whether that's in a physical space, or if you don't have a physical space, you could showcase it online, whether that's a website or social media. You could also try showing videos of people working on different projects that are maker related. A big one is, how do you get that buy-in with the community? Sometimes the biggest breakthroughs actually come across when something catches the eye of someone else. So, for example, this past weekend, we were working on some projects in our makerspace, and people just started stopping by to see what we were doing, and we were able to engage with them. And that's a really great way to be able to just get more people invested and curious and knowing about the makerspaces that you have in your communities. When it comes to building partnerships, you want to try to multiply that reach and continue to grow it as much as possible. So with that, you have to meet your community members where they are. It's great if you have a physical space, and we do want people to come into our maker spaces and come into our libraries. But if you can go out into the community and meet them where they're at, you have a much larger ability to make a big impact and get them invested in your maker spaces.
Do you want me to go to the next slide?
Next slide, yes, sorry. A great tool and an example to kind of see all your different community options is to do an ecosystem map. If you've never done one of these before, it's a great visual tool so you can see where your library is, and then you look outside of it. So who are the big stakeholders in your community? What businesses are around you that might want to invest in your makerspace and partner? And then you can also look into your schools and other businesses and avenues that you have in your surrounding area. And then for one of our case studies that we had was the Billings Public Library. Their big challenge was, how can they reach a broader, more diverse community? They really had a core group of people coming in, but that kind of emerging adult 20-year-old group, they weren't coming into their makerspace at all. So that was their challenge. How can we reach a bigger group in our community outside of just this core population that continues to come in? What they started investigating in their strategy was looking into partnerships. So they did a lot of talking and observations with their patrons that came into their library to kind of see what they actually wanted engagement wise. And then they also looked at some of their local partners that they could kind of bridge a gap to some of their other communities that they had in their surrounding area. And because they have limited staffing, they really looked at low barrier and high impact engagement. So if you have limited staff, how can we do that outreach, have that engagement if you only have a few people? So what they decided to do was do some tinker hours and some maker hours so people could drop in and come in when works for their schedule versus with that limited staffing schedule. The results that they had was they had a increased participation and they had a bigger community investment in their makerspace. So they have more people coming back to their makerspace now because they took the time to kind of take those steps and do that outreach and in that engagement with their community.
Okay, I'm up next. My name's David Powell. I work just south of Memphis in northern Mississippi. I'm coming off my second year of the being on the leadership team at Library Makers. I just wanted to mention before I go into it, Library Makers is a volunteer organization. So if you want to get involved with the organization, please do. We have places for you, and we'll take advantage of that. So. But to get back to the presentation, so our second challenge is called making the case, and this is about why do we need a makerspace? Why would it be a good thing? How do you make the case? How do you sell this? So it's about communicating a clear evidence-based narrative of the value and impact of the makerspaces, and getting that support, securing the resources. So you want to clearly communicate the value and the impact of your makerspace. Next slide. So strategies to do this. The very first one is you're going to want to have data and stories. And you're probably, if you work in a library, you're probably used to that, especially in public libraries. Your data is going to show your reach. It's going to show your attendance. It's going to show your attendance numbers, the usage data, how many people are coming through the doors and working in your maker spaces, and those are all very important. However, what really gets a lot of people is the stories that really evokes the emotion of everyone from your administration to your funding sources to other patrons. So you really need to do both. Um, and the stories that can reflect your, the outcomes of like your skill development, creativity, community connection. These are the things you want to show because that really will resonate with people, especially your funders. The next one is shift the focus from activities to impact when you're selling a makerspace. Because activities sound really fun and they're important and we do them, but why do we do them? This is what's really important. And when you're talking to someone and making the case, especially if you're talking to someone who's not in your space at that moment, showing like photos of participants, what they're doing, samples of projects, the more impact will make a more immediate and memorable sell for why your makerspace is so important. The next one is our next strategy is align makerspaces with your community priorities. You want to connect those programs to your local needs to get the strength so that people see that these are relevant and strong connections for your community. And finally, tailor and simplify your message because no one wants to hear. Well, some people want to hear, but but a lot of your funders, they're busy people. Your patrons are busy. So if you can get your message just down to a simple, clear statement of why you matter, and align that with your audience. Keep your audience in mind, because you want to address their priorities with the community or their usage of the library or or whatever that may be. Next slide. So we do have a tool. You might be familiar with the elevator pitch. This is basically if you were to walk in an elevator and you had someone next to you and wanted to have a conversation, tell them about something, in this case, Makerspaces, you can kind of follow a script because you only have maybe one or two floors, so you can't say, so you got to make those words count. So we kind of have a script here, and the next slide has an example of someone who followed that script. So this person was saying like how many elementary schools are not equipped with the program, and that this is an integral bilingual makerspace to help their children and families develop skills in coding, science, sewing, technology, and so much more. And if you can get those sentences in to someone in the elevator, it'll make it. I often use an elevator pitch for funders, especially state representatives or someone like that. So these are it's really important to have your elevator pitch ready to go because you never know when you'll need it. Next slide, please. And we do have case studies on making the case. One important thing is, like we said earlier, the challenge is you want to make your makerspace be reflective of your community priorities because that's what you're going to get people. If they understand that it's a priority in your community, then it matters, and you're making that case. So the strategy that Boyne District Library used was they did a lot of discussions and involvement from local businesses and schools from the start, especially the local businesses. What do people need if they're in the employees they're going to hire? What kind of skills do they need? What kind of experience do they need? So once they knew that, the results were they started with the community input, and that helped decide what equipment they were going to purchase, and also what kind of what type of programs and curriculum they were going to have using that equipment, to make sure that if people wanted to use the experience to get a better job or to get a job in their community, that was one purpose of their makerspace, not their only purpose, but one of them. So, so we can go on to the next challenge. Okay, I'll start out with this and I'll hand it off to Cindy. Our next challenge that you have at a makerspace is accessibility and belonging. You want your makerspace to not just be open to all, but to include everyone, to be very welcoming. Accessibility is more than just being able to physically access the space. So you want it to be very welcoming and you want it to be accessible for people so that, it's open the hours people need it. It's providing people with what they need. So designing the makerspace and programs, you want to remove boundaries and barriers so that all community members can participate and feel a sense of belonging. Next slide, please. So in order to do that, you want to design for accessibility from the start. This is so important. You got to keep accessibility in mind. I mean, it's never too late, but if you're starting right now, planning on your makerspace, keep accessibility and the welcoming environment in mind for how you set it up, how you organize it, how you decorate it. How you want it to be welcoming and you want it to make sense and be easy for people to move about. Another strategy is you want to create that welcoming first experience. And like I said, the furniture where the placement of the furniture and the equipment matters. But what really matters is not just all the stuff that's in the makerspace that they can do, but the staff who are in there or when they're in there. You want to make it a welcoming first experience. That's usually a human touch. So you want to welcome people when they come in through the door. You want to be prepared to give them a quick orientation if they've never been there and they want it. You want to invite people to the programs that are going on in the makerspace. That little touch a lot of times makes the difference. So another way to make it more accessible and welcoming is examine your policies for any hidden barriers, that might exist. You probably didn't intend them to be there, but there might be something that you need to open up. What you need to ask yourself some questions like, what are you currently expecting people to walk in the door with? What skills are you expecting them to have? And then, is that reasonable? Do you need to prepare those skills? Maybe what your policies or your procedures have right now need to be changed. Maybe you can ease some things. Maybe you can't. Uh, you know, but it's very important that you're always kind of looking at your policies and your procedures to make sure that they fit with your space. And then you want to build shared expectations and training for staff. That means most people, when you think about training for makerspaces, most people think automatically the equipment and the programs, the software. But it honestly, probably what matters even more to keep that makerspace vibrant is your customer service skills. Knowing accessibility practices, having a variety of tools in your toolbox to help people who have different needs and different backgrounds walking in. Next slide, please. And so a tool that you could use here is the People and Purpose tool. This will help you identify who might be using your in your community, who might be coming in through your doors, and what they might need to do and what you might need to do for them. So this helps you get ready for that. Next slide. Oh, I skipped over it, but Cindi, did you want to talk about a case study?
Sure, I actually added one, but it didn't get in. I'm Cindi Place, and I too have been on the leadership team for 2 years. I started out with Library Makers as an ambassador. I am a director of a very small rural library in northern Michigan, and I am actually I have just ended my term as the chairman of the leadership team. I can only tell you that there's joining Library Makers is an awesome thing for you to do for your librarians, for the people that work with you, for your patrons. And again, it's free. It'll always be free to join. So just consider that. So the library I wanted to talk about when we're talking about accessibility was a case study that you'll find in the our Making It Work document, and it was from Chesterfield County Public Library. And what they did is they did an assessment. They were having not a lot of success getting people into their library makerspace. And so one of the things they did was talk to people. Why is it a problem? How come you can't come in? And they go outside the library because you don't want to just talk to the people that are in your library because obviously they're in there. Go to different service organizations, have open online discussions. In any case, one of the things they discovered was the location itself was an issue. It wasn't walkable. You couldn't get to their library in their makerspace. And so they were working with their local public transit and trying to find ways to encourage people to ride the transit, have the transit drivers understand what is going on at the library. They're one of your best ways of communicating what's there. Oh, you're going to the library. Did you know they have a makerspace? That kind of stuff. And so also they identified that there was an awareness gap between what they were doing and what the public knew they were doing. So they really beefed up their information. They put flyers in all the senior centers. They went to the schools and asked permission to put in flyers. They also considered, one of the things they also considered was when are they offering the classes? Some of the sessions were meant to help with employability skills. And if you offer those classes at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a weekday, chances are you're not going to get the kind of responses you would get if you do offer it later in the evening or on a Saturday or a Sunday, depending on whether you're open. So they looked at a lot of the things that were barriers for them, and they addressed those. They also had some problems with, or some concerns with a barrier of if somebody was in a wheelchair, they could get around, but there wasn't a good place for them to sit at a table at their level. So this is something that Chesterfield did. There's a whole big long description of the case study, and it is in our document. So that's the kind of case studies that we offer to you with some real practical, telling you what the problem was, telling you how they resolved it. And there's actually a lessons learned part of the case studies as well, which is really great because it tells you that, well, it didn't go well the first time, but here's what we did to make it go well the second time. Thanks.
Okay, so earlier, this kind of ties in with outreach and engagement. So you have staff, obviously. Sometimes it might just be one of you. Sometimes you might have a few other people involved. So there is this big challenge of How can you help your staff grow? And how can you also empower them? A lot of that has to do with recruiting and sustainability. So that's what this challenge is all about. With these strategies, the top one is really you want to try and recruit staff that have a curiosity and a willingness to learn. You don't necessarily need to focus on they have all these technical skills, because a lot of what we do in Makerspaces is you just have a curious mind and you're like, hey, let me try it out. Someone in the chat had put, give it a shot and let me know how it goes. They have that in their Makerspace. That's kind of what you want when you're recruiting staff. So that's a really big strategy that you can approach. You also want to look at creating some gradual learning pathways instead of a rush training. So make sure your trainings are really well thought out. You're not throwing a ton of information at them at once, and you're kind of scaling it as they go so they can kind of build up what they've learned before. And we've talked about this in other Library Maker webinars as well, but you want to create a very safe place to kind of try and fail for your staff and your patrons. If you model for your patrons and your staff that it's okay to try something, fail, and then just try it again and keep experimenting, that's a really big strategy when it comes to really supporting your staff, empowering them, and developing their skills in Makerspaces. And then the last strategy is obviously making sure that when you approach staff training and engagement, that you're building time and structure for ongoing learning. So get with your other library leaders or your team members that you have at your libraries and see how you can kind of build time into their schedules to help make sure there's time for people to continue to learn in the makerspace, because you need time. You can't learn it overnight. It does take a little bit of time to kind of get familiar with the whole process. Next slide. A great tool or resource that you could use is visiting other makerspaces and chatting with other people. Library Makers is a great platform to do that. You can always hop into the newsfeed and kind of pop there. Or if you have the opportunity, you could actually do a field trip to another makerspace. You could chat with somebody and get a virtual tour. When we were having the kind of leadership summit, I joined virtually, but I got to see somebody else's makerspace and I was like, I like that. I like that. I want to do that for our makerspace. So it's a great way to collaborate and help you feel supported, but also your team feel supported with the makerspace and kind of developing their skills. I don't have slides for case studies, but when you read the full document, I really encourage you to look at the two that we have for staff growth and empowerment. They're very different. We have the Octavia Lab at the Los Angeles Public Library. Theirs is focused on scaling staff development in a very high demand makerspace. And then the other case study is actually on reshaping expectations and how to empower staff through rapid change. So kind of both ends of the spectrum when it comes to what's important for staff growth and empowerment with makerspaces.
This is me and Cindi again. There's a question on the chat. They want to know about the documents again. Lisa, is it best to just suggest they go to librarymakers.org, sign up, and then they have access to both the toolkit and the report, or do we want to put links in there?
Yes. So, yeah, I'm sorry, I can't see the chat because I'm sharing the screen.
Oh, well, it says, can you all send the document again?
Oh, sure. So if maybe librarymakers.org, we encourage you to, I think you joined the community to be on this webinar, so you're already on. Maybe we can, if you look on the left-hand side, you'll see like a making it work section on the community. Maybe we can even screen share once we get through this section and show folks where it is on the community. How about that? But it's definitely all up there, and I can demonstrate that after we get through that. Or
Stephanie also put the link up.
Perfect.
Awesome. I am going to speak to sustainability and future readiness. So that it doesn't matter if you are like I was and started with a cart and had a cart for about 4 years, or if you have a really successful makerspace. But as we all know, things change, especially technology or the way people do things, or you might run into somebody that has a great skill that you haven't even addressed. We worked with our Native American population, and now we have regular classes on beadwork and a lot of the other artwork that our local tribes do. So you're always looking for ways to get better. And one of the things that we do in the making it work is we give you some ideas of how to assess what you need to do, and then how to actually look for better financial support, or how to go to your administrator and say, hey, we want to do this program. It's really great, but we need staff. So our document does talk a lot about how to keep going and keep doing what you're doing. Next slide. So some of the strategies we talk about is making sure that you are offering the best that you can do and are capable of doing in your makerspace. Offer programs that you are fairly certain that your community wants to know about. Talk to people. We have buttons made for our staff that we change every other day with one of our button maker, which is part of our makerspace. And on it says, ask me about, and it'll say, ask me about this class, or ask me about our maker program, or do you have something you'd like to do at the library? But that's face-to-face is sometimes the best way to get information from patrons and community members. It's also when we found that people really didn't know we had a maker area, we had asked about our makerspace, and then there are a lot of people checking out what is your makerspace. So make sure face-to-face is part of your way of promoting your makerspace. Look for different ways to fund. In Michigan, we have access to the Michigan Humanities Council, and then there's another Michigan Humanities organization. They will fund a lot of the work that you want to do in your makerspace, a lot of humanities types programs. That means anything with art, with building stuff, with teaching a little bit about history. Look for humanities funding in your area. They can fund a program or a piece of equipment for you. And also be aware of what you have in your library. My libraries that I have worked in are all small, very, very small, like 2,000 square feet to 3,000 square feet. And so we don't have a lot of space for things, but we do know what we have. And we started with a library of things, and now we use those items to teach classes. Sewing machines and button makers and Cricuts and vinyl cutters. Those are some of those things we already had. So if you're in a bigger library, know what you have access to and pull that stuff into your maker programming. It's very difficult to just have a makerspace where there's no staff people really involved, and it's all they walk in and do the work that they want to do, what they mean the patrons. So when you're creating or making or sustaining your makerspace and you want to make it better, say you want to add some construction tools to your makerspace, a router or something. So it's always good to look at what other libraries that have that equipment are doing. We created training tools, and for some of our tools, like a router, for example, that could be dangerous. Of course, there's an age. They have to be 18 or above, or they have to have an 18-year-old with them working on this equipment. But we have up to sometimes a half hour, sometimes it's 15 minutes. There's some training they have to go through to be able to independently use some of that equipment. So as you get different equipment, I don't know how many of you remember the old 3D printers. There was no case on it. They were louder than the heck, but they were also really hot. And our first library actually had that on a shelf in the children's area. And it was like, no, 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 no. We're going to move this where the little kids can't get their fingers in it. So just think about the more that you can do to have patrons come in and say, schedule a time, however, to use a piece of equipment, and then you don't have to be standing there with them, the better your space is going to be, because people will be comfortable in coming in and trying on their own. A story that I really like to talk about is we had a 3D printer. We ordered one for our library. I wasn't involved in that decision, and nobody knew how to use it. So it sat in the shelf for a while. And then a local engineer from a manufacturing company came in, saw we had make the 3D printer, and said, can I use the 3D printer? I need to make these pieces for their line, where they were manufacturing. And we said, sure, but can you teach us how to use it? So he taught us how to use it. He made the little things he needed to make for his manufacturing company. He wanted to show his plant manager that they needed a 3D printer. So after he was able to do these parts and could fix what they needed to fix, not only did they get a 3D printer, but they bought the library another 3D printer because they were just so pleased that we were willing to let them use it to try it out. So, that's an unexpected pathway to get some money or to get some equipment. And then you have to plan for obsolescence. It's no different whether it's a computer, whether it's a sewing machine, whether it's yarning equipment, whether it's a loom, whatever it is, paint, anything. You need to plan to budget for obsolescence. Yes, that means you need to have a budget. But if you're lucky enough to have some budget, the makerspace can have some budget. Consumables can be very expensive. Consumables also can be donated. You can get thread from people. You can get yarn from folks. We have a large group of people that scrapbook and make cards at our library. And we've got a plethora of paper and dies and stamps. So it's one of those things that you need to think ahead. Yes, I want to get into this, but I also am going to have to be prepared to somehow supplement or continue to make the equipment better. Equipment breaks. I guarantee one of the best things you'll do when you buy a new piece of equipment is ask the salesperson if they support the equipment, or if they don't, can they point you in the direction of who could repair this equipment? The last thing you want to do is have a piece of equipment, as I did, which was a reader, and nobody could fix it. So when it broke 2 years after I spent $5,000, there was nobody to fix it. So just most pieces of equipment can be purchased with, if you can get it, an insurance plan or some kind of fix. It depends on the equipment. You don't want to have to fix a 3D printer. You really want somebody, because bottom line is you're probably just going to buy one because you can't figure it out. So plan for the life cycle of equipment and materials. Next. So in our toolkit, as we've discussed a few times, there is an example of using a physical inventory to keep track of what you have. You can keep track of how old it is. When we're going for a budget every year, I usually plan with data to say, okay, we have, 3 computers we're using with our makerspace, and 2 of them are going to be 5 years old. So we need to budget in some money for that equipment. Again, so this checklist, you can keep track of equipment, but I would also recommend the year you bought it so that you know how long it'll be before you're going to probably have to replace it. And this is something anybody can do, this inventory. It doesn't have to be the maker person in charge. It can be any staff person. Honestly, I have used student pages to do stuff like this. They love it. It's easy. And honestly, yes. And the checklist is available on our toolkit, which is also available on our website. Next slide.
Okay. Thank you, Cindi and Stephanie and David. So I'll see if I can pull up our website too, just to show everyone where the tools are. And but then we're open, so while I'm doing that, be thinking, we're open for questions and also to hear from all of you. I mean, we know these aren't all the solutions that are out there in the ethos of all of you. And so we're also interested to hear if you have other things that you have tried to address these challenges as well. So while you're thinking of that, let me stop sharing and just see if I can pull up our website as well.
Oh, Lisa, I already have the website up. I can show it real quick if you
Oh,
like.
yeah, please. That would be great. Thanks, Kelly.
Sure thing. Give me just a second. Share. So if you guys can see this, this is Library Makers. I'm on the events recording page. So you can see like right here what was going on. And then we have a event next week, so a little advertising. So on the left-hand side, I don't know if you can see my mouse right here, but there's newsfeed membership, the blog, about library makers. And there's the Makers in the Library Toolkit that we talked about, was the first publication. And right here, the new Making It Work. I hope everyone can see that okay. I'm going to click on it. And so I hope everyone can see it's okay, because like it's raining like crazy here.
We can see it.
Okay, good. Sorry. I'm hearing thunder, so it's kind of making me nervous.
It's on your
So
way.
up here is the new Making It Work. Yep. And then so down here is like the introduction. And you can click on all these different ones to look at the different case studies and the different everything that was talked about. You can look at about this publication, and you can and I did this earlier, but like you scroll down, you can download the full publication right here. So you can have it all in one nice big document. And a big special thanks to all the writers and reviewers of the document. So they're all listed here as well. And you can go down and jump to the different tabs to see, and then download them as a full PDF, and then see the different case studies of everything that we talked about here. So I hope that helps. I'll go ahead and stop sharing real quick. Give me just a second.
And one of the things I wanted to point out too is that in addition to, if you join Library Makers, in addition to all the webinars that we have planned throughout the year, we are planning a virtual conference, hopefully in the spring of 27, maybe as late as April. So if you're a Library Makers member, you'll get information about that directly. And this is going to be, it will be a charge for it, but we're hoping to keep it really low cost. And it's going to be a day full of all sorts of webinars and keynote speakers, but it'll all be virtual, so you don't have to pay travel to get here. But it'll be real similar to like what we just did now would be similar to one of the sessions that we would be putting on. But we're going to be people are going to be, if you have an idea and want to do a proposal, there'll be a call for proposal the next couple of months as well. So we're really excited about the conference. We think that it's one of a kind, and we're trying to make it really, really valuable to the makers in this country and beyond.
All right. Did anybody have any questions? I didn't to share, or if they had some stories they wanted to share as well. You're welcome to drop them in the chat. I can read some of them out, or if you want to, you can take yourself off mute. And if you want to share stories as well, go right ahead.
I guess I'll start out too. One of the things we didn't talk about is that there are some unseen, when you're talking about making the case, there are some unseen advantages. We find that people who come to our programs and use our makerspace become more confident in everything because they try something, they fail, we help them try it again and try it again. So it's not just like David said, it's not just we have a 3D printer, but it's we have all these skills classes that we can teach, or this equipment where you need to learn how to use a 3D printer, or you need to use a vinyl cutter. We have that equipment at the library, and you can learn how to use it, and it's an employability skill. You can say, I know how to use this, and this. So just keep in mind there's some some of the obvious things you learn on Makerspaces, but there's some less obvious things that are important as well. Somebody wanted to know if we're going to be at the Maker Fair in San Francisco. Oh, and it was answered. So Yvonne Silva is going to be there. So anybody that's going to the Maker Fair in San Francisco, one of our leadership team members is going to be at the Maker Fair in San Francisco in September.
Marjorie says, we've got some challenges to navigate next year. Our building is going to move our space to a smaller area. We're trying real hard to prepare and make sure we can adapt to the new space without losing many of the functions. All right.
David, you know a lot about moving spaces. I feel like I know, unfortunately.
Gosh, going to a smaller space is always a challenge. Lisa's referring to, I had one of our I work in a system of 14 branch libraries, and one of ours unfortunately this spring burned down, and we had to find a temporary location to house the library. So that was quite a challenge. I think the best advice I can give in terms of a makerspace is kind of go back to those tools. Take advantage of being able to, going to new spaces, kind of like in a way starting over. So I take advantage and really assess what are the key things that your community has responded to, or that you have, and what are the things people really want and need. And sometimes look at if there's a way you can multi-purpose like space. Like I know my first maker space we had was rather small, and so I ended up having a lot of stuff on cabinets and out for easy to get and easy to view, but they didn't have doors on the cabinets, but I had a lot of just tables, and people could just get it out and use the tables for whatever they needed. Of course, that's an easy solution, but I would really go towards what's been popular, what are things that your community really needs, and kind of rank those and focus on those. I wish I had better advice, but that's the best I can give.
I know I came from a library that we did start with a very small space, and we what we did is we would focus on certain months on certain pieces of equipment. Like David, we had it stored. Some of our equipment was relegated to our library of things, so that was somebody else's problem. But then when we needed that equipment, we could bring it into the makerspace and use it. But the library had a library of things that they could take care of storing that stuff. And so that's kind of, the way we did it, but we would focus on two or three pieces of equipment a month, at least the first 2 years after we moved, so that people could see we still had stuff. It just, we didn't have room for everything to be out.
All right. All right, just looking through the questions again. Kaylee says, we currently offer printing as more of a service than an interaction thing. I'm wondering if anyone else does this or has changed between the two options, patron-led versus service-based led. And then she also added, I should note that we're an academic library, which might be a little different than other scenarios. Did anyone have any experience with a similar experience and how they might have solved that?
I can definitely comment on that one because I've worked at libraries that have done both. Um, so I prefer letting it's not as easy, and especially in an academic setting, it might not be easy. I prefer to have classes and teach the patrons how to use software and how to do the printing themselves. However, we would always, after learning the hard way, we learned that as far as like putting the filament and things in the 3D printer, that was best left to staff. But as a service, it's worked really well. That's at our current library. We don't have, at my current library, I should say, I don't have the maker space that I used to have, and I don't have the staff I used to have. So we do it more as a service where patrons find a file that they'd like to print. We tend to say, we're only going to let a print job last about 3 hours max. Otherwise, we just get too backed up. So it's usually a little thing, and they can email it to us, or they can email it to us, or they can give us the file. We have ways of doing that, and then we call them when their print job is ready, and we hold it for where I'm a public library, so we hold it about 2 weeks, sometimes longer, and then as things pile up. But I think the kids like it a lot more. Where when we were teaching and having it as an interactive experience where they could come in once they were trained and they do it themselves. I saw a lot more repeat customers and patrons of all ages using it. Where the service-based, I see a lot more of our youth using it than adults. So that's just been my experience at a public library.
All right, thank you, David. And I see Anna has her hand up. Do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I'll just say that I work at Sonoma County Library, and we have a 3D printer in almost every branch, but we do it as a service to patrons or not. They don't touch the machine. They're welcome to come and look at it. It's usually some of the branches have them out on the floor for patrons to see them working. We have had classes in the past about how to create your own 3D prints, mostly just like Tinkercad classes and stuff, but to talk about 3D printing and have questions answered and stuff. We are at the point where the service is so popular that we're having to place limits more and more on what can be requested. So we have a 4-hour limit, which is flexible depending on who takes the request. And then, we can say no after one request at a time. So when we have their job done, then they're allowed to place another one. And we've had to really clamp down on those guidelines where we didn't have to in the beginning. But we have a 3D printer here. It's actually in my office at the branch that I work, and it's running the entire time that we're open. But yes, just a service, not, we don't let anybody else use them, the patrons use them.
All right, thank you, Anna. I see there's another question or comment here from Celine. I wonder about the openness of having a guest makerspace person, possibly paid, visiting some libraries to host an event in Spanish in case that was what they needed. I don't know if anyone want to comment on that or if they've had something similar with that at all.
I think that's an awesome idea, Celine. And language, we don't have as much of a language issue in Northern Michigan, but those are one of the barriers. Another barrier is when we write directions, not everybody in our community can read, especially adults. So, so we try to put pictures with everything, especially the simpler things. So, I mean, that would be awesome if you had somebody that spoke Spanish and could run a program in Spanish. It's also a great way for someone who's speaking Spanish and wants to learn to come and try to do it. Kids who are taking Spanish classes, here's a practical way for them to use their Spanish. But that's a really good point, Selena. I think it's important that we are aware of there are more barriers than just physical barriers. There are barriers of language and other things like that.
All right. Did anyone else have any other questions or anything they wanted to ask? I think we have about like a couple minutes left. All right. Is there a link to find out more about volunteer roles in librarymakers.org? Also, is there a research group doing library makerspace research? Yeah, if you go to librarymakers.org, I think we have most of our committee roles filled right for now, but we always do a campaign every year to add more people to our committee and leadership teams. However, if you would like
we could
to
use help
be a
on the virtual
presenter.
conference.
Yes, that too. Thank you. I know we just had our big in-person meeting, so I'm always like trying to think, okay, what were we doing again? So yeah, so if you would like to help with the virtual conference, we have some ad hoc committees that could use some help. You can always message me or Lisa or any of the leadership teams on there as well.
And if you put it
But
even
definitely,
on,
if anyone,
you even put something on the news feed is that you're interested in. We're all monitoring that news feed all the time. And I guess I'll put some emphasis on the news feed. One of the really great parts about Library Makers is I have filament and I can't seem to get it stored in a good place. How do you guys store your filament? Or, I have someone who wants to teach a quilting class, but not everybody has a sewing machine. What can we do? Or that news feed is amazing. But if you were to put in the news feed, I'm interested in, or like Lisa said, or even send an email, I'm interested in helping, you'll get to the right person. We're always looking for people to help with programming and other things too.
definitely thank you guys for that assistance there. But yeah, so really quickly, I'm gonna go ahead and share a link in the chat. This is a link to our survey. So just let us know like what you thought of today's program, as well as give us your ideas for what you want to see on Library Makers. And I'm gonna take a second to show my last slide on here, just to kind of thank you guys for coming today. And like I said, come on to librarymakers.org. Create a free account, share with your other fellow library makers, as well as, if you're interested in joining any of our ad hoc committees or helping out with presentations or programming or anything like that, we will always take help no matter what. So just go ahead and jump on in there. And our upcoming event, we have a creative reference interview for next week on August 6th. So RSVP to that if that's something you're interested in. And until then, we will see you guys later. Bye.